Last time on Where the Food Comes From, we met a University of Florida scientist who's leading the battle against a disease that's devastating the entire citrus industry. We also showed you the role that our porch play in protecting the food supply chain and what can happen when something slips through those cracks. Now we're going to introduce you to some farmers who are fighting back against a threat to their very livelihood. Come on, let me take you where the food comes from.
The Florida grapefruit is the best grapefruit in the world, and you don't have a lot of product where you can say this is the best product in the world. You know, I come from France where wine is a big specialty, but there is not one area in France where you can say this is the best wine, right. French wine. And even French wine cannot say that it's the best wine in the world. You have very good wine in California, in Chile, in Australia. But grapefruit, there is such a big difference between the Florida grapefruit and the competition. Having a product which is the best in the world, I think that's something unique and it's fantastic, yeah. Now we have a challenge, of course, you know, with the citrus greening, and the production in Florida is maybe it's 10% of what it used to be, and we feel that it's worth to fight for this product because it's such a special product.
In the early days, as discussion of greening was spreading amongst the Florida growing community, what was the pervasive sense? Was it kind of like, oh yeah, this could be a problem, or was there even then an awareness that it could be as devastating as it's been?
I think yes, and I think pretty fast people saw that it was very risky to invest in citrus because we had to spend a lot of money to survive, not being sure of the result. Fortunately, in our case, we are a very diversified company. We are not only in citrus. We also grow ornamental trees, which is a totally different market, totally different risk, and we felt it was very risky to stay in citrus, to try to save citrus, but we could afford to do it. We could take this risk. And I can understand many growers who unfortunately were not diversified. I could understand their decision to quit early before losing everything because the risk was here.
Sure. Is grapefruit more or less susceptible to greening than other varieties of citrus?
More susceptible, yeah. That's probably the most difficult, and it depends on the variety. We learn a lot. The Ray Ruby, for instance, is very susceptible. The Star Ruby is not as susceptible, and the white grapefruit is in between, yeah.
So you've got that compare and contrast of being in these groves and doing this work, pre-greening, at the onset, and post-greening. Is there an easy way to show us the difference between 96 and now?
You know, pre-greening, a tree would grow in spite of us, you know. We would set 650 boxes to the acre with 4 fertilizer applications. You know, today, you know, we're 200, 250 boxes today to the acre average, and we're, you know, 6 to 8 applications of fertilizer. So those are the differences. It's not just a one size fits all. Greening is forced us to always be in kind of a state of change, right? Because we're figuring out why is fruit, you know, why are we not getting size? So what do we do to tailor our programs to promote? So, and it's just, it goes back to the ground. It goes back to the ground.
Yeah, it was easy. Yeah, maybe it was too easy, and maybe I think it takes crisis to make progress. And I think we learned these past 15 years. We learn a lot, and we go now, we use, traditional citrus grove, grapefruit groves. When I started in this industry, we had 70 trees per acre. Now, when we plant new groves in grapefruit, we put 272 trees to the acre. And we are doing some experiment at 1,000 trees per acre.
Wow.
So everything is changing, yeah.
So once again, we see it's not a magic bullet and there will not be a single solution. It's a lot of smaller contributions that keep Florida citrus moving forward and make a future for Florida citrus.
That's right, yeah. If we don't do something, if we don't replant grapefruit might disappear in Florida, and I don't want to let this happen. I will fight all the way to the end to keep Florida grapefruit alive. So that's part of my mission, yeah.
How many different varieties of citrus are grown in Florida?
Commercially, 5 or 6 grapefruit types, but 15 maybe on mandarin, tangerine types. And
15?
And on the experimental side, right now, there's 36,000 unique varieties in the ground that have to be evaluated through this process. I mean, there's no true resistance known within the citrus genome to this disease, but there certainly are very varying levels of tolerance that we need to understand and tap into.
So you've got 100 people in a room, somebody comes in with a very bad cold. You're all in there together for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. At some point, other people in the room are going to become infected. That's going to spread, mm-hmm. But it's very probable that not everyone in the room will become infected.
You see all these people scurrying around my lab here. One of the things that they're all trying to find out is why. There's a lot of research underway in my lab and in many other labs trying to answer these questions. If we can understand the whys and the hows, the mechanisms, we might be able to use that information to do something, whether it's develop new improved varieties or come up with some clever management strategy to take advantage of the reasons why. So behind me is probably the oldest sugar bell tree in Florida. This is one that growers are really interested in. There's probably been 200,000 of these planted in the last few years, and there it is, still standing, still producing boxes and boxes of fruit. It's not perfect. I can show you symptoms on the tree where there are off-type fruit and there are off-type leaves, but overall in general, this thing keeps going. These two are also fairly good-looking trees, I think you'll agree. Mostly dark green, they've got big fruit on them. That one's a little smaller than this one. These are the same variety. They're not a commercial variety, but they're sister seedlings of the sugar bell. We have other hybrids from that same cross that are dead and gone long time ago. So it's not just the cross, but it's some of the individuals in the family that are better or worse than others. So that's part of the mystery, part of what we're trying to figure out.
So from a marketing and consumer standpoint, the varieties are there to provide different flavor options. Absolutely. This tastes better, I like this one better, this is just my favorite. From a commercial standpoint, the wideness in variety is important for protection of the crop and sustainability for the future.
It absolutely is. And on the process side, their job will be coming up with the blend of all of these new things coming forward that meets that consumer demand, and allows them to differentiate their product from one another. We're learning as we go, and we don't fully know how to handle this, but some of these will go in the ground and they tank right away. I mean, they just start declining and they're gone. Others look really good for 5, 6 years. You think you really got something, and then it starts declining. And others will start looking bad in their first 3 years, and you want to pull them out, but you leave them there, keep them fed, keep them going. Talk to them if necessary, but they'll come back. and then they come roaring back almost as if they're developing, you know, they're withstanding the disease better as they grow older, and they establish root zones and keep right on going. And so we're not really sure when to give up on things anymore, because you have them going both directions.
Guys, this looks like the biggest circus complex in the world. I mean, these giant tents are everywhere. What's going on out here?
This is citrus under protective screen, cups as we call it.
So, if you don't want bugs at your back porch picnic, you screen in the porch. You don't want bugs in your citrus crop, you screen into trees?
Exactly.
Steve, that sounds like a very big job.
It's a very big job. We have 110 acres under screen right here where you are.
Right.
113 acres under screen going in across the road, and we'll have a total of 300 in 3 years from now.
Wow, so we are pretty much in the middle of the state. Bartow,
the heart of the citrus belt.
Heart of the citrus belt right here.
We will be producing more than 500,000 boxes of citrus
Good
right
Lord.
here in this location.
That's right.
Now, how does that compare to a traditional field or grove not under cover?
We'll be producing 4 to 5 times as much per acre compared to a traditional outside orchard.
How does just putting a screen on top of it make that possible?
Well, the trees are very, very happy. Less insects, less disease issues. It's a tropical environment that you're creating, so the trees grow 2.5 times faster than they'll grow outdoors.
Let's go look.
There you go.
Let's go see what this is about. I've seen a lot of things inside, but trees is not usually one of them. How many trees are under cover in one of these enclosures?
One of these enclosures, there's over 3,000 trees.
How safe is it under here? How likely are these trees to remain infection-free from citrus greening?
Very likely to remain free. They're completely enclosed, screened environment. The psyllid is the insect that transmits and spreads citrus greening. It can't get inside. So even though these mandarins are very susceptible to citrus greening, and in the other houses, red grapefruit, very susceptible to citrus greening, we don't have to worry about it. They're in a happy place right now.
The vastness of this is very surprising. Now, I know how much it costs me every time I have to rescreen my back porch. You know, it's a little bit of an investment. I can only imagine what it costs to do hundreds of acres of citrus under cover. How is that cost effective?
It can be fairly capital intensive, but what the trees will do inside, how fast they grow inside, the quality of the fruit they produce inside, the quantity of fruit they produce inside, it all makes economic sense.
So it's all about offsets.
That's right, that's right.
Why would you not grow all citrus in Florida this way, under cover like this?
I think trying to cover an existing grove would be cost prohibitive. I mean, this is something that you have to plan in advance, pick the right location that you're putting it up in, start from scratch, put it over a piece of land that you can bring the young baby trees into that are not infected with any disease, very clean, coming right out of the nursery. You have to start from scratch to do this.
And pretty much at this point, every outdoor grove in Florida is infected with HLB, is infected with greening, whether it's showing symptoms or not.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
So you wouldn't do any good just to go put a screen over an existing grove?
No, not at all.
Now remember earlier I told you that oranges and citrus had found an unlikely ally in spinach? Now we're going to tell you how that happened. And to do that, we headed down to Southern Gardens Citrus on the shores of Lake Okeechobee, where they've developed an entirely new way to attack greening based on the research of the late Dr. Eric Murkoff of Texas A&M University. This is a scientific laboratory for agriculture. It's outdoors because it's got to be outdoors.
Yes, everything we're doing right now is regulated both by the EPA and the USDA. We don't have an EPA registration. This is pure research. There's none of these trees for sale. So what we have here is kind of a merger of two different technologies. Dr. Murkoff investigated what we call spinach defenses, very small proteins, just simple proteins in spinach that are the first line of defense when spinach comes under attack from a bacteria or an insect, right? We have defensins in our mouth.
Right.
Right, it's the first line of defense for for most living organisms to fight diseases. Dr. Murkoff looked at spinach saying, if we can use these to help fight disease in other crops, we're using them from a known food source.
Now that initial product though, that would be a GMO, a genetically modified organism.
Exactly, because we have taken the genetics from spinach and put them within the genetics of the tree. That's not what we're standing in front of out here. That's the beauty of this technology. We're not doing anything to the genetics of the plant. These are Hamlins with the technology residing in it. They're Hamlin. They're going to act like a Hamlin.
It's just a Hamlin orange.
It's just a Hamlin
period.
orange. The beauty about this technology is it doesn't interact with the genetics of the tree. Basically, instead of treating HLB with foliar sprays in a sprayer, we've taken it and we're treating it and allowing the protein to reside in the tree. So we don't have to come back and do multiple applications of something. It's just always working in the tree. What we looked at though is the process to get from that initiation of putting the gene in a genetically modified tree to get a commercial tree could be 10, 12 years. It's a long process. And we looked at, do we really have time to do that? We're managing the disease well with horticulture, but there's an urgency to give us a tree that has some type of embedded or technology that resides in the tree that's fighting the disease.
So you've managed to keep the protection from spinach in a citrus tree that's not a GMO.
Exactly. What we're doing has never been done before. So there's no roadmap of taking this type of technology and moving it through the regulatory process. We don't have some that went before us to kind of show us the way. We're basically in the middle of the jungle creating our own trail. This is really the first planting of a possible solution in citrus greening anywhere in the United States.
So Southern Gardens really took the Dr. Murkoff and others were the flashpoint. You guys picked up that ball and ran with it.
We took the initiative and carried the risk, you bet.
What we're trying to do is take advantage of things that could naturally occur within the DNA, within the genes, to give us desirable outcomes. Look at what corn looked like 10,000 years ago. Didn't come on a cob. You know, so many of the things that we're familiar with in our food, you know, are just mutants that smart farmers over years have taken advantage of. We're full of mutations. If we sequence your nose and your toes, we're going to find that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small differences in the DNA between your nose and your toes. And so theoretically, these things that we're doing could happen naturally. That's the process of evolution. And there are many populations in the world who are just opposed to the technology because they view it as unnatural. In the evolutionary scale of things, having a single gene that gives you a defense against a disease is a short-term solution because bacteria and pathogens mutate all the time as well. And so if the defensin gene from spinach works, or if we find one gene that we can edit and it's just one, the bacteria might in a year, in 10 years, we don't know how long, mutate and find a way to overcome that resistance. That's been the history of plant breeding since humans started collecting wheat seeds and corn seeds. We've been selecting and the pathogen overcomes the resistance, and we select, and that's life.
Is there a tipping point for survivability for the Florida citrus industry?
There may be, there must be, I might say. We've already gone past several previously proclaimed tipping points. You know, somebody said when we hit 100 million boxes, it's all over. Well, we're at 75 million now. 2 years ago, we were at 40-some million boxes. Farmers are resilient. Farmers are passionate. Farmers are dedicated. The farmers who had an easy life, they're not in the business anymore. The people who remain behind are either some of the craziest or some of the smartest. Greening has made us better citrus growers than we ever were before. Life was easy 50, 60 years ago in Florida citrus. So the people who are still in it have their heart and soul in it and their brains. They're really smart people.
So we are not going to give up. We keep investing in grapefruit. We know there will be a solution, and we'll be here when we discover the solution.
I think that the growers that are still in business are in business because they are finding successful ways to be able to manage their groves to still be profitable. You know, they're changing to certain rootstocks that tolerate greening better. They're moving to varieties that tolerate greening better. They're introducing production practices, caretaking practices for the groves that are improving the health of the trees through nutrition. So all of these are a combination of reasons that, you know, keep these folks in business and keep them going. And they're farmers. They don't give up.
If you've been in agriculture long, you tend to be an optimist, right? It's an inspiration.
You better.
When you meet these fifth generational farmers and these young men that are taking it over, they're risking everything to take it over in unknown times, you have to be inspired. You can't walk away from there not being inspired. This industry is worthy of this effort. Believe that, sleep that way every night. It's a beautiful industry to be part of.
When I give academic lectures from time to time on this subject, on citrus greening, I have a slide that I like to show at the end. It's a photo I took of a wall somewhere in China, not the Great Wall, just a brick wall. And something happened, a hole got blown in this beautiful brick wall. And the farmers there picked up some rocks and they picked up the broken bricks and some cement, and they put this thing back together. And it's not as pretty as it once was, but it's a wall. To me, that's analogous to what the citrus industry of the future is going to look like. We are not what we used to be. We are never going to be what we used to be. But we've learned how to get bits and pieces and to put something back together that's functional, that's going to work. And that's how I see the future.
Florida citrus will survive.
Florida citrus will survive, no question.
So what does the future look like for citrus? It's uncertain, but it's definitely different. With a world to feed and billions of dollars on the table, it's not just going to go away. Farmers and researchers are working every day looking for a solution out here where the food comes from.